Hello everyone, Rebecca here from Stocking My Pantry, and in today's video we're going to be making and canning blueberry jam. Now I am using my ball jam and jelly maker for this, and so it'll be small batch. It'll probably be 3 or 4 half pints of jam, and I'm going to be canning it in my Nesco canner, but you can use any water bath or steam canner that you have. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so I'm using the recipe for the berry jam in the booklet that came with my ball jam and jelly maker. Now I wanted to say that Ball no longer makes this jam and jelly maker, but another company is making one that's essentially the same. They must have bought out the rights for it or something. And so I'll put a link for that on the video. I'll pop up a product link for that so you can get that if you would like. All right, now I'll first of all read off the ingredients to you. It calls for crushed berries, and it says about 1 1/3 pounds or 4 6-ounce containers. So 4 6-ounce containers would be 24 ounces. I had bought some fresh blueberries and froze them, and so I just measured out 24 ounces of blueberries, and I've of course let them thaw. So that's what I have here. It then calls for 3 tablespoons of powdered pectin and a half of a teaspoon of butter or margarine, and then it calls for granulated sugar. Now, if you want to do traditional, that would be 3 1/3 cups of granulated sugar. If you want to do reduced sugar, that would be 2 cups. Now, I always go for 2 cups, the reduced sugar recipe, and trust me, it's plenty sweet enough. But the challenge with that is that if you do the reduced sugar, you increase the amount of fruit. And so when I crush these blueberries that I have, I'm not certain if I'm going to end up with the right amount of cups of crushed blueberries to do the traditional recipe or the reduced sugar recipe. So basically what the process is, of course, you clean the blueberries and then crush them 1 layer at a time using a potato masher. So I got my potato masher, and my initial thought was to, crush them in a large, kind of like a 9 by 13 pan or something like that. But since I need to measure them to know how many I have, I decided to crush them in this Pyrex container here, and hopefully it will work well. I mean, it still has a pretty good surface area, so I think it'll be fine. And then that way I'll know how many in cups, how many crushed berries I have. So let's go ahead and crush the berries. So again, I don't want to dump them all in at once because, it says 1 layer at a time. So I'm going to do probably about 1/3 in. Okay, I'm just using the potato masher. And hopefully you can see how much juice is coming out of those. And again, they don't have to be completely pulverized, but I kind of like actually having some little bit of chunks in my jam. And then pour in some more. Okay, now I'm going to dump the rest of the berries in. Okay, now I ended up with just over 3 cups of berries. So let's look at the recipe again. It says if you're doing the traditional recipe, you need 2 2/3 cups of berries, reduced sugar, 3 1/4 cups. And so I have just about enough for the reduced sugar. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put slightly more than the reduced sugar. So now using the reduced sugar amount, instead of 3 1/3 cups, it says 2 cups. I'll probably just put 2 cups, and just the second cup I do a little bit heaping, and it should be about the right amount. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next step. Okay, I have my jam and jelly maker here. We're going to go ahead and plug it in. The instructions are to sprinkle the pectin evenly over the bottom of the pot fitted with the stirrer, and then add the crushed berries evenly over the pectin. Add butter or margarine, which you do a half of a teaspoon of butter or margarine, and this reduces the foaming. All right, so I've got my pectin, my 3 tablespoons of powdered pectin. I'm going to sprinkle that over the bottom. Obviously, I got some on the stirrer, but it'll all end up getting incorporated in. Okay, and now we're going to add the blueberries fairly evenly. Okay, and see, these aren't perfect, but they're not bad. All right, and then I am going to do the butter or margarine. So I'm just going to drop that in there. And then the next thing it says is to press the jam button, and the cook time will automatically default to 21 minutes. Now, I've never started with frozen berries like this, and like I said, I thawed them, but they are pretty cold, so I'm going to add a couple minutes to it. So I'm pressing jam, and then I'm going to push plus for 2 extra minutes and press enter. And you can see that it is beginning to stir. And if you notice, there's pectin down at the bottom that's not getting mixed in. It will get mixed in, so don't worry about that. Okay, so now this is going to go for 4 minutes, and then it will beep. And when it beeps, then we'll add the sugar in. The thing I noticed after I poured them in is that there's quite a few that are still in, you know, fairly large, like whole berries or almost whole berries. And so I ended up deciding to do about 2.5 cups of sugar. So it's a little bit more than the reduced sugar, a little less than the traditional. And so I was just concerned I might not have enough of the berries there, or, you know, to do the reduced sugar. Okay, now I heard it beep, so it is time to add the sugar, and again we're going to do it as evenly as possible. It won't be perfect, but that's okay. And one thing I forgot to mention, and hopefully you could see, is that the pectin had completely dissolved. But anyway, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and put the lid on. And we have about 19 minutes left before it's done, and I'll bring you back at that time so you can see what it looks like. Okay, we have less than a minute left, so I'm going to take the lid off. Normally you would just leave the lid on, but I want you guys to be able to see what's happening in there. So I'm going to just take the lid off. And you want to hold it away from you because it is obviously a lot of steam's coming out. And so there you can see what's happening. And I'm just going to put the lid back on for it to finish up. Okay, hopefully you heard the beeping. So now it's time to take the lid off. And I just want to warn you, especially if you have the ball jam and jelly maker, be very careful with the lid. I've broken one. You can't replace them. I mean, you can buy something from a store that's similar. But anyway, be careful with that. So I'm just going to take that and put that aside. Okay, and I'm going to unplug the jam maker. And the stirrer, needless to say, is extremely hot. So I'm going to use a pot holder to remove it. And you want to just kind of shake off anything that's on it. And then I have a paper towel here to put it aside. And now it's time to fill the jars. And like I said, I'm going to be canning mine. But you don't have to can yours. You can freeze it and so on. So actually, let me get the book and read the instructions to you for the other option. Okay, so there's 3 ways to preserve it. You can ladle the hot jam or jelly into hot jars, cool to room temperature about 30 minutes. Place the jars and bands on the lids and refrigerate for up to 3 weeks or serve immediately. You can freeze it. You can ladle it into hot jars, leaving a 1/2 inch headspace. Cool to room temperature about 30 minutes. Place the lids and bands on jars, label, freeze it for up to a year. Now I am going to can it, and so I'm going to put it into hot canning jars, and I am going to use, let's see, I think it's a 1/4 inch headspace. Yes, a 1/4 inch headspace. So you guys can see a little better, I'm going to move the jam maker over and put my jars here in front of me. Heated my jars in my Nesco canner, and I have actually 5 little jelly jars heated up, and then I have some larger jars in the canner just because you want to always run a full canner. But anyway, I'm going to take 4 jars out because that's how much the recipe said it would make. All right, so I'm going to use just a ladle and a funnel to hopefully not make too much of a mess. Now, I seem to never get as much yield as it says I will. So I've got a little bit left in here. I don't think it's going to fill another jar, especially once I debubble and bring everything up to that 1/4 inch headspace. But I really don't mind that because whatever goes into the final jar, I just won't process. I'll just let it cool and then put it in the refrigerator. And we will eat it sooner rather than later. Okay, so let me just use my little headspace tool. And yeah, I do need a little more in that one, a little more in that one. This one's pretty much perfect. All right, now we are going to wipe the rims. And like I said, whatever's extra in here, I'm just going to put into this jar and we'll enjoy it sooner rather than later. But let's go ahead and wipe the rims and get these jars into the canner. Actually, I decided before that I'm going to go ahead and partially fill put whatever's left into this one jar, because this stuff is pretty darn sticky, as you can imagine. And I want to put water into the jam maker, get some hot water in it sooner rather than later. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so I have a little bowl of vinegar, and I'm just going to dip paper towel in it. And obviously you want to make sure it's not just dripping, because you don't want to get any vinegar into your jam. That would not be very good. And speaking of jam, I did take a little taste of this. I mean, you can't hardly help but give a taste of it when you're kind of spooning stuff out and all of that, and it's really good. So, and it was already starting to set up a little bit. You can see I have the 3 jars here, and then I have this partial jar, and it's looking like it's setting already, so I know it'll be great. All right, let's go ahead and put the lids and rings on. I had 4 lids prepared just in case. I suspect that I don't get quite as much yield as it says. I don't know if it has to do with me using less sugar or what, but anyway, it's either that or I don't crush the fruit as much as it says, but I do like a little bit of chunks in there, so what can I say? All right. And we're going to go ahead and get it into the canner. Okay, now I've got the lid on. It's in the exhaust position. It's going to stay in the exhaust position the whole time, but you do need to turn to close it. And according to the instructions, you need to water bath this for 10 minutes, adjusting for altitude. I am going to do 15 minutes. I'm adding 5 minutes on for my altitude. So let's go ahead and get this started. Okay, I'm going to press water bath and time. And again, it would be 10 minutes. If you were below 1,000 feet, I'm adding 5 minutes. And pressing start. Okay, now we're going to wait for a steady stream of steam. When that happens, I'll press start again and the countdown timer will begin. If you need more help with water bath canning, if you use the Nesco, I have a tutorial on how to use the Nesco to water bath can. If you use another canner, a steam canner or whatever, just refer to the manual for that. And usually it's water bath canning is pretty straightforward. So I will bring you back when we have the final product. See you in just a little bit. Okay, the jam is out of the canner. As I was taking it out, each jar as I took it out of the canner, I heard it ping, which was fantastic. So it looks like they've all sealed. It's too soon for me to test the seals, but it looks good. So, you probably can't really see this, but holding up one for you. And in addition to the 3 that I canned, I did end up with a little less than a half of a pint. So, a quarter of a pint. And I just stuck it in the fridge, but I'm going to go ahead and, oh, it's actually very, very set. Probably I didn't actually need to put on that extra 2 minutes. Remember, it was really cold because the berries had been frozen. So, you know, it's thick, but it's not like it won't spread or anything like that. So anyway, and I'm going to just take a quick taste of it. I've got some on the spoon here. That's really, really good. It's sweet, but not overly sweet. I definitely recommend using the reduced sugar amounts because it's plenty sweet as it is. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would really appreciate it if you would like the video. And if you haven't already done so, if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.